Today we are going to talk about algebraic vocabulary and like terms. By the end of class today, you will be able to determine the like terms within an expression. To start, let's review what an algebraic expression is. An algebraic expression includes numbers, variables, and operations that are grouped together to show value. Okay, so remember an example of an algebraic expression would be like 5 y plus 3x. We've got numbers, we've got variables, we've got operations, no equal sign. Okay, when we are talking about algebraic expressions, we've got 4 parts that we're going to talk about. The first are the terms. These are the parts of your algebraic expression. So down here in your algebraic expression, we have 2 terms. 5x is a term, and in between here, that would be 5 times x, but we don't put that multiplication sign in there. 5 times x is one term, and 4 is another term. These terms are separated by our addition signs or our subtraction signs. So those are your terms. Next up, we have our variables. Our variables are those symbols, those letters that represent values that we don't know yet. Next, we have our coefficient. Here, our coefficient is 5. The coefficient is the number that is attached to your variable. Okay, so coefficient, like co-worker, somebody you work with, that coefficient works with that variable. Then we've got our constant. Our constant is the number that's by itself. It's not going to change. Over here, this term will change. Once we determine what x is, we will multiply these together. It'll change. Coefficient, variable. Our constant is not going to change. It stays here. Okay, so we've got 2 terms here, a coefficient of 5, x is our variable, and 4 is our constant. Then we've got like terms. Like terms are terms that have the same variable and are raised to the same power. So a term would be like 5x if it also had the variable of x. Let's take a look at a couple of examples. Here we have 2x plus 7 plus x plus 2. Well, we've got 4 terms here. 4 terms. Each of those separated by that addition sign is a term. So if I were to list my terms here, I've got 2x, 7, x, and 2. Okay, so each of those are my terms. I list out the entire term. Then I have my variables. Well, here I've got an x. These do not have variables. And then I also have another x. My coefficients. All right, so my coefficients here are the numbers, again, that are attached to that variable. Here, 2 is attached to my variable. Now, there always has to be a coefficient. So here we just have x. That means that the coefficient is 1. Here we have 2 x's, 2 times x. Here we would have 1x. So we would make sure to include that as a coefficient. Next, we have our constants. Those are the numbers without variables. So here we have 7 and 2. And then lastly, we have our like terms. Now, our like terms are terms that have the same variable raised to the same power. So here, 2x and 1x both have a variable of x with no exponent. So one set of like terms here is 2x and and 1x. Now, if one of these was raised to a power, it would not be a like term. Constants are also considered like terms. They do not have variables, so they are like as well. So my like terms would be 2x and 1x and 7 and 2. All right, let's go ahead and do one more example together. We've got 2z squared plus 4z plus 3z squared. How many terms do I have here? Well, I've got 1, 2, 3 terms. So I'm going to list those here. 2z squared, 4z, and 3z squared. Variables. What are my variables here? Well, I've got z squared. That z is attached to that squared here. And then I also just have my z. Next, I've got my coefficients, my numbers that are attached to the front of my variable. Here I've got 2, 4, and 3. Constants. What are my constants here? Well, I have no number that's by itself, so I have none. No constants. And lastly, my like terms. Well, this 2z squared, this has a z as a variable, but it's not like because it's not raised to that second power. However, here, 3z squared is. So because these are both z's and raised to the same power, they can be like terms. This is not a like term. It is just a z. So when I would write out my list of like terms, I would write 2z squared and 3z squared.